The security guard wore a faded blue uniform and swept the halls in silence. Most students didn't even know his name. To them, he was just the old black security guard who stood by the cafeteria, always watching but never saying much. They mocked him, ignored him, and rolled their eyes when he asked them to slow down in the hall. But the day chaos erupted on campus, they finally saw who he really was. And by then, he had already saved their lives. At Westbridge University, a campus known for its red brick buildings and buzzing ambition, there was a man most students didn't notice. He walked the same halls every day in a worn security uniform, navy blue, slightly faded at the seams. His name tag read Elder Briggs, but barely anyone took the time to read it. He stood quietly near the cafeteria in the mornings, circled the dormitories in the afternoons, and took the night shift every weekend without complaint. Always present, always silent. To the average student, he was just the old black security guard, the one who nodded when you passed, who reminded you not to skateboard indoors, who occasionally told you to keep your music down. He didn't carry a weapon, he rarely raised his voice, and he never argued. In a place filled with future CEOs, doctors, and tech prodigies, Leonard Briggs was a shadow. Most students didn't even know his first name. Some called him Gramps, Grandpa Guard, or worse, the hallway fossil. A few would mock him openly on social media. There was one student in particular, Josh Whitaker, a sophomore business major from Connecticut, who made Briggs the butt of his TikTok skits. "Old man security trying to stop me from living my best life," Josh would say into his phone, filming himself skateboarding past Briggs, who simply shook his head. Josh wasn't a bad kid, just a privileged one. Raised in a world where respect was earned through status, wealth, or connections. And Briggs, in his eyes, had none of those. Just a mop, a badge, and some slow old man energy. The administration never said much about Briggs either. He'd been on the campus security team for over a decade. No one knew when exactly he'd started, and nobody asked. He never missed a shift. He didn't get involved in campus politics. When there were complaints, he handled them. When there was danger, he showed up first. But because he was quiet and didn't demand attention, he stayed in the background. Students passed him every day, earbuds in, phones out, heads down, oblivious. But if you looked closely, really looked, you'd notice something unusual. Briggs stood with his shoulders straight, feet always planted, eyes constantly scanning. He had a certain stillness about him, like someone trained to wait and watch. He moved with purpose, not fast, but efficient. His shoes were always polished, his posture never slouched, and when he spoke, it was never more than necessary. Not robotic, but deliberate. Some students did see him, but not in the way you'd hope. They noticed him just enough to laugh when he walked by, or mutter, "Okay boomer," when he politely asked them to clear out of the hallway. One night, after a dorm party got shut down early, a few drunk students sprayed shaving cream on his office door. No one was caught, and Briggs didn't report it. He just cleaned it himself. But even in the face of constant dismissal, he stayed kind. There was a freshman, Mia, who got lost during orientation. While other staff brushed her off, busy with schedules and student lists, Briggs walked her across campus himself, explaining how to remember the buildings by their roof colors. She'd never forget it. There was Elijah, a junior dealing with panic attacks after his father passed. He once sat on a bench outside the library crying silently at 3 a.m. Briggs didn't say much. He just sat down beside him, placed a hand on his shoulder, and waited. That moment stayed with Elijah for the rest of the year. Still, Briggs never sought attention. He didn't share stories. He didn't talk about his past. He just did his job, replacing batteries in hallway clocks, resetting dorm alarms, and keeping an eye out for students stumbling out of frat parties at midnight. He knew their names. He knew who lived where. He knew which students were just acting out and which ones were genuinely lost. But they didn't know him. He was invisible. And yet, something about him, some quiet strength, lingered in the halls long after he walked through them. One professor, Dr. Natalie Green, once mentioned in the faculty lounge, "There's something about Briggs. The way he moves, the way he watches, it's like he's trained for more than this." But most others shrugged. "Probably ex-cop," someone said. "Retired mall security," another joked. And that was that. No one asked. No one looked deeper. Not yet. Because the truth about Mr. Leonard Briggs, the weight of the life he'd lived, the people he'd saved, and the battlefield scars he carried under that blue uniform, hadn't come to light. Not until the day the campus turned into chaos. And that quiet, invisible man became a hero. Leonard Briggs had a routine. He arrived before sunrise and stayed long after sunset, walking the perimeter of Westbridge University like clockwork. While students came and went with hurried footsteps and earbuds plugged into playlists, Briggs noticed everything, without ever seeming to watch. There was a rhythm to the way he moved. Every 2 hours, he checked the east dorm stairwell door that never latched properly. He always paused for a moment at the back entrance of the science building, where a flickering security light needed repair. And each day before lunchtime, he made a slow loop around the main quad, not just for show, but because he knew that was when most students skipped class, broke rules, or needed help. If anyone had been paying attention, they might have noticed something different about him, something that didn't fit the image of a tired, overlooked campus guard. Mr. Briggs wasn't just wandering. He was patrolling. With precision. Dr. Natalie Green had noticed. A sociology professor in her 40s with a soft spot for overlooked people, she'd occasionally greet Briggs with a warm, "Good morning, Leonard." Most times he'd just tip his head in acknowledgement. But one morning, she lingered. "You ever serve?" she asked casually, her coffee steaming in her hand. Briggs paused for the briefest moment, just enough to notice. Then nodded slowly. "A long time ago." That was all he said. She didn't press. But the way he answered, calm, measured, respectful, stuck with her. Others picked up on subtle clues too, though few cared enough to think much about them. Coach Ramirez swore Briggs was the only person who could break up fights outside the gym without raising his voice. "It's like the kids feel something in him. Like they know not to cross that line," he once said. There was also the way Briggs handled emergencies. One afternoon, a freshman passed out from dehydration on the soccer field. By the time paramedics arrived, Briggs had already elevated her feet, cooled her neck with a damp towel, and directed other students to call for help using precise, steady commands. No panic. No fuss. The paramedics exchanged a look. "You've done this before," one of them said, impressed. Briggs just gave a quiet nod. More than once. Behind the scenes, he handled countless quiet crises without expecting praise. When a dorm fire alarm kept going off at 2 a.m. for no reason, he was the one who discovered the faulty wiring, and the student who had been using candles in her room despite rules. Instead of turning her in, he gave her a long talk about consequences and trust. She never lit a candle again. He was firm but never cruel. Gentle but never weak. And he never boasted, not once. Yet the depth of his character showed in ways that words never could. There was a strength in his silence, the kind forged in fire and shaped by years most people never asked about. His body carried small clues, a healed scar above his eyebrow, the unmistakable posture of someone who had once worn medals, not name tags. And his eyes, sharp, focused, always scanning, betrayed a lifetime of vigilance. Still, students like Josh Whitaker kept up the jokes. He even posted a photo of Briggs from behind on Instagram with the caption, "Back at it again with the grandpa watch. Somebody get him a rocking chair." It got 147 likes and 0 objections. But not everyone laughed. Mia, the freshman Briggs had helped months earlier, glared at the post for a long time. She didn't comment, but she saved the image to remind herself that people can be cruel even when someone's trying to protect them. Josh, like many others, was blind to what was right in front of him. To him, Briggs was an extra, background noise in the theater of his college life. He didn't know about the box of supplies Briggs kept in his tiny office for emergencies, bandages, antiseptic, tampons, granola bars, even clean socks. He didn't know Briggs used his own paycheck to buy them. He didn't know that the worn Bible on Briggs' desk had 6 names written inside the front cover, young men from his old neighborhood, all lost to gun violence. He carried that book every day, a small reminder of why he chose this quiet path after a life of chaos. But perhaps most importantly, no one knew what Leonard Briggs had given up. A decade earlier, he'd been offered a teaching position at a prestigious military academy. But he'd turned it down. Why? Because he believed young people needed more than lectures and drills. They needed someone walking the halls. Someone watching without judging. Someone they'd ignore now, but might one day remember forever. He had no need for status. No thirst for admiration. He just wanted to keep them safe. And all the while, the students laughed. The faculty forgot. The world moved on. Until the day it couldn't. Because the storm that would shatter the quiet routine of Westbridge was coming. And when it hit, Leonard Briggs would no longer be invisible. It was a crisp Thursday morning in early spring. Students were filing into classrooms, coffee in hand, earbuds in, laughter echoing through the courtyard. From the outside, it looked like any other day at Westbridge University. But inside Building C, the one housing the business and journalism departments, something wasn't right. At exactly 10:06 a.m., a loud bang echoed through the hallway. Some students thought it was a drop table. Others froze. Then came a second bang, sharper, unmistakable. A scream followed. Then chaos. Someone yelled, "He's got a gun." Desks scraped across floors. Books dropped. Screams erupted as students scrambled out of classrooms, flooding the hallways. A junior named Rachel dove behind a vending machine. 2 freshmen ran straight into a supply closet and locked the door. 1 professor fainted before she could reach the exit. The shooter, young, male, and visibly unstable, was pacing the corridor outside room 207, armed and agitated. No one knew why he was there or who he was targeting. He didn't seem to care. He fired randomly, shattering glass, ricocheting bullets off lockers, sending students into sheer panic. Across campus, the fire alarm began to blare. A general alert went out through the university app, lockdown. Active shooter reported in Building C, shelter in place. And while students huddled behind doors and faculty tried to contact loved ones, Leonard Briggs was already moving. He'd been on the east end of campus when he heard the first shot. He didn't flinch. Didn't pause. Just turned and ran. At 61 years old, Briggs moved like a man half his age. Not recklessly, but with deadly focus. He didn't wait for backup. He didn't radio it in. He knew every hallway of Building C, every shortcut, every blind corner. While others scattered, he charged straight into the chaos. At 10:10 a.m., he slipped through the side entrance of Building C, keeping low and fast. The sounds of panic were deafening: screams, alarms, the terrifying crack of another bullet tearing through plaster. Briggs didn't carry a gun. Campus policy prohibited armed guards, and he never pushed back. But what he carried was more powerful: training, courage, and a deep, unshakable calm. He spotted a student crawling out of a lecture hall, bleeding from a grazed shoulder. "Stay down," Briggs whispered, pulling the young man to cover behind a vending machine. He tore off his sleeve and wrapped it tightly around the wound. "You're gonna be okay. Breathe slow. Don't move." Then he was gone again. Briggs moved through the building like a shadow, anticipating the shooter's next steps. He knew the layout better than anyone, where the stairwells dead-ended, which doors were reinforced, which ones didn't lock properly. He remembered a broken latch on the second-floor fire escape and made his way there. Along the way, he found more students, some frozen in fear, others crying silently beneath desks. To each one, he gave clear, steady instructions. Barricade the door. Turn off the lights. Stay low. His voice never trembled. Down the hallway, the shooter advanced toward a locked classroom, room 209. Inside were 16 students and a professor, all huddled in silence. The shooter raised his weapon toward the door's glass panel. And that's when Briggs made his move. From behind a vending machine just 15 feet away, he shouted, "Hey!" The shooter turned. Briggs had nothing in his hands, no weapon, no armor. Just a voice filled with command. "You don't want to do this," he said firmly. "You've got a choice. Right now." The young man hesitated. Confused. He raised the gun, but Briggs didn't move. "My name is Leonard Briggs," he said. "I've seen war. I've seen people die. But I've also seen lives saved when someone chose to stop." For a split second, the shooter froze. And in that moment, Briggs stepped forward and rushed him. The gun went off, once, then again. But Briggs didn't stop. He tackled the shooter to the ground with the force of a freight train. The gun skittered across the floor. Students inside room 209 screamed. Another guard, new to the force, arrived seconds later and helped subdue the suspect, calling in police backup. By 10:18 a.m., it was over. The building was cleared, the shooter arrested, and paramedics rushed inside. Briggs lay on the floor, blood seeping from his shoulder. One of the bullets had torn through muscle, but missed anything vital. He was conscious, calm, and still trying to reassure the crying student beside him. "It's gonna be all right," he whispered. "You're safe now." It wasn't until the EMT lifted his shirt that anyone saw the tattoo on his chest, an eagle holding arrows, military insignia. Later, as news crews swarmed the campus and social media lit up with hashtags like #HeroAtWestbridge and #BriggsTheBrave, students began asking, who was this man? And what they would discover would change how they saw him forever. News of the Westbridge shooting spread across the country within hours. Reporters crowded the gates, helicopters hovered above, and TV anchors used words like heroic, miraculous, and unprecedented. But the name on everyone's lips wasn't a student or faculty member. It was Leonard Briggs, the man so many had barely noticed just days before. The headlines were as stunned as the students. Unarmed security guard saves dozens during campus shooting. Former decorated veteran risked life to protect students. Westbridge hero walked the halls in silence, until the day he spoke. In the days that followed, more about Leonard Briggs came to light. He had served in the United States Army for 22 years, rising to the rank of Master Sergeant. He had completed 3 tours overseas, received a Bronze Star for bravery in combat, and was known among his fellow soldiers as someone who never left anyone behind. There was footage of him from years earlier, standing in uniform, saluting a fallen comrade at Arlington. His face looked younger, but his eyes were the same, focused, calm, resolute. Yet after retiring from the military, Briggs didn't take a high-paying job or settle into comfort. He returned to his hometown, a community struggling with violence, poverty, and disillusionment. He volunteered at youth centers, taught conflict resolution to teens at risk. And when Westbridge University posted a listing for a security guard, he applied. The pay was modest. The hours were long. But that didn't matter to him. He told me once, said Dr. Natalie Green during a campus vigil, that keeping kids safe wasn't something you stop doing when you hang up your uniform. It's something you do because it's right. As more people began to speak up, the image of Leonard Briggs, once dismissed as a quiet old man, transformed into a symbol of quiet strength. Mia, the freshman he had once helped during a heat stroke, stepped forward publicly for the first time. He didn't just help me when I was hurt, she told a local reporter. He checked on me every week after that. No one else did. He remembered my name when I felt invisible. He made me feel safe just by being there. And Josh Whitaker, the same student who had mocked Briggs in an Instagram post, stood on stage during a campus tribute, face pale, voice shaking. I didn't know him, Josh admitted, eyes lowered. I judged him. I made fun of him. And the truth is, he still saved my life. I was in Building C that day. If he hadn't been there, I wouldn't be standing here right now. A long silence followed. Then, quietly, students began to stand. One by one. Dozens of them. Some had known him by name, others only by presence. But they all stood, not just for what Leonard had done, but for what they had failed to see before he did it. He had walked their halls for years. Had protected them with the discipline of a soldier and the heart of a guardian. And they had overlooked him because he wore a patch instead of a title. Because he was quiet instead of loud. Because he was black, older, and didn't fit the mold of who they thought mattered. Now they knew better. The university president announced that Leonard Briggs would be awarded an honorary doctorate in humane service. A full scholarship would be created in his name for students who demonstrated unshakable integrity, quiet leadership, and a commitment to protecting others. A permanent memorial would be built near Building C, engraved not just with Leonard's name, but with the names of all those whose lives he had saved that day. But the most powerful tribute came from Leonard himself, weeks later, once he was released from the hospital and invited to speak at commencement. He stood before the graduating class of Westbridge University wearing a crisp navy blue suit. His shoulder was still healing, but his posture was unshaken. "I'm not a hero," he said softly. "Heroes are people who step up when it counts, but also the ones who do the right thing when no one's watching. Every day, you walk past people who are carrying things you don't see. Struggles, wisdom, pain, love. Don't wait for a tragedy to recognize the strength in someone. Don't let quiet people be invisible." Then, looking out across the crowd, he smiled. "I didn't save lives that day because I wanted recognition. I did it because I've worn too many dog tags around my neck to let another young life slip away, not on my watch." Tears filled the eyes of many in the crowd. And for the first time in Westbridge's history, the longest and loudest standing ovation didn't go to a CEO, an athlete, or a tech billionaire. It went to a man who had once been called just the security guard. Time moved on, as it always does. The crime scene tape was removed, the walls of Building C repaired, the broken glass swept up. Classes resumed. Midterms came and went. The rhythms of college life slowly returned to Westbridge University. But something fundamental had changed. It wasn't just the added security measures or the new emergency protocols. It wasn't even the new cameras or the reinforced doors. It was the way students looked at people they used to ignore. They began saying hello to the janitors and maintenance workers. They asked the names of cafeteria staff and made eye contact with the grounds crew. Where there had once been invisibility, there was now acknowledgement, born not from pity, but from understanding. Because everyone remembered the day they learned that Leonard Briggs, the man they had overlooked, had saved their lives. The memorial in front of Building C became a place of reflection. Students sat beside the bronze plaque engraved with Leonard's name, tracing the words with their fingers. Sometimes they left flowers. Sometimes handwritten notes. Most of the time, they just sat in silence. One morning, someone placed a hand-drawn sign under the memorial. It read, "It's not the title. It's the truth in the heart." No one took it down. In fact, the university had it laminated and framed. Briggs himself returned to his post a few months after the incident. He declined early retirement. "There's still work to do," he told the campus security chief. "And I don't run from duty." But students didn't see him the same way anymore. They no longer passed him by. They stopped. They thanked him. Some asked for advice. Others just shook his hand, eyes filled with emotion. Even those who had once mocked him now sought his presence, his words, his quiet wisdom. Josh Whitaker, the student who had posted that cruel photo, started volunteering with the campus veterans program. He said he wanted to understand men like Briggs, men who served and sacrificed, men who didn't wear their worth on their sleeves. I learned that being a man isn't about being loud, Josh said at a university town hall. It's about standing tall when it counts. Mr. Briggs showed me that. For Briggs, the attention was never the point. He never wanted glory. Never asked for applause. If you asked him, he'd still say the same thing, I was just doing my job. But in truth, what he gave them was more than safety. He gave them a mirror. A reflection of their own ignorance, yes, but also a glimpse of what strength really looked like. It wasn't in flashy speeches or athletic trophies. It was in consistency. Grace. Steady hands under pressure. A life of purpose, lived quietly and fully. Leonard's story spread far beyond campus. News outlets ran follow-ups. Veteran organizations honored him. Schools invited him to speak. His speech at a national education summit went viral, where he said, "Every campus in America has someone like me, someone who isn't trying to be seen, but who's always watching. Always ready. We don't need to be celebrated. Just respected." Back at Westbridge, a freshman class entered in the fall with no personal memory of the shooting. But they had heard the story. They were shown the memorial on their first campus tour. They were told about the man who wasn't just a guard, but a protector, a warrior, a quiet legend. One student, a young black man named Jordan, said it best during his orientation. "Seeing someone like Mr. Briggs, it makes me believe I can matter too. Even if nobody claps. Even if nobody sees." The legacy Leonard Briggs left wasn't in medals or plaques. It was in the way people began to see each other, with a little more care, a little more humility, and a lot more heart. He'd made them realize that titles fade. Appearances mislead. But character, true, unshakable character, reveals itself when the world is burning, and someone chooses to run toward the fire. That was Leonard. Not just a security guard. Not just a veteran. Not just a hero. A man who lived in service of others. Who never demanded respect, but earned it in the deepest, truest way. And long after he hangs up his uniform for good, the students of Westbridge, and the world beyond, will remember him not just for what he did on one terrifying day, but for reminding them who they had the power to become. The end. In a world that often celebrates the loudest voice in the room, Leonard Briggs reminded us that true strength speaks softly. He wasn't chasing recognition. He wasn't looking for applause. He was just a man who showed up, every single day, to protect those who didn't even see him. But when the moment came, he stood tall, and the world finally looked up. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to honor the quiet heroes around you, the ones we overlook, the ones who serve in silence, the ones who remind us that courage wears many faces. Please don't forget to like, comment, and share this story, because the more we tell these stories, the more we learn to see the humanity in each other. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Join us for more real, powerful stories that move you, inspire you, and make you think. Until next time, stay kind. Stay aware. And never underestimate the quiet ones.